Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so excited you're here today. I'm Amelia. I'm a senior at LIC, and I'm the chair of the Bay Area Youth Climate Summit. And as you'll hear in a moment, we have educated and activated over 1,000 youth all over the Bay Area. And last year, about a month ago at this time, we ran our first entirely youth-run summit with high school students from 88 schools and 14 different states, 75% of which created climate action plans that they would implement in their schools, which you'll also hear more about soon. This year, we're hosting two summits. Today's is the virtual piece, and then tomorrow we're hosting an in-person summit at St. Ignatius. And our summit is designed to spark exciting conversations and most of all, be really action-focused. So first, I want to give an incredible warm welcome and thank you to our student leadership team. First to today's core team, Erica, Hannah, Alyssa, Una, Kyan, Emily, Feline, Dory, and Lena, and to the other 24 members of our Youth Advisory Council. You all have worked so hard to help plan this and spent really long hours and dedicated your summers and your afternoons to this, so thank you so much. Over the past several years, we've all been painful witnesses to climate change, especially here in the Bay Area and California, with terrifying bright orange skies from fires and flooding and hurricanes. And climate change not only will impact our children and our future, but it impacts us right now. And so while it should not be, it is up to us to demand that we have a healthy, green, and just future. So we're here today to empower you to create change in your schools and your communities. So thank you for making time to join us today. And now I'm going to pass it to Erica to introduce a quick video.
All right, thank you. This video was made by one of our team members, Emily, but unfortunately they cannot join us today. But here it is anyways.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the second annual Bay Area Youth Climate Summit. We are so excited that you're all here.
To everyone who's joining us for the first time, we're very happy to have you.
To those who are joining us again, we are grateful to stay connected with you, and we hope all of you have a great time today.
Our first summit, held in September of 2020, had more than 280 participants from 88 schools and 7 time zones.
We had many workshops, from activism to poetry to empowering youth to create change. We have helped create more than 15 climate action plans.
Since then, in the past year, we've hosted monthly workshops with topics ranging from the auto industry to indigenous climate activism to marine protected areas, reaching a total of over 950 youth.
In December, we worked on a project with the Compton Kids Club to collect eco-friendly hygiene products and used winter coats to donate to community fridges and mutual aid organizations.
It's been so exciting to keep learning and expanding since last September. And this year, we're super happy to be hosting both a virtual and in-person summit, which we couldn't have done without your support and participation.
Today, we have a keynote speaker, 2 sets of workshops, and lunch activities for you all.
Our keynote speaker, Aletta Brady, will make their debut right after this introduction at around 10:40. They are the founder and creative director of Our Climate Voices.
Your first workshop will start at 11 o'clock, and we have so many exciting options. For example, I'm leading a workshop with Data for Progress, talking about how we can harness data to create change.
Lunch activities are from 11:50 to 12:20 and include everything from phone banking to artivism to discussions. And don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to eat lunch.
The second set of workshops begin at 12:50 and end around 1:35, with other fun workshops such as Bye Bye Plastic and Mighty Microbes.
We'll have a quick break at 2:15 and then close up the summit.
And don't worry, if you lost track of everything we just said about all the different times and Zoom links, you should have been sent an email with a table of different Zoom links, times, and workshops.
If you have any problems finding that or any other issues throughout the course of the summit, don't hesitate to DM us on Instagram at BayAreaYCS or message the #help channel on our Slack. Both of these links will be put in the chat.
I want to thank the amazing team and everyone else who helped organize and create the summit.
We appreciate all of you for attending, and we hope you enjoyed the rest of your time here. See you soon.
Alrighty. Now I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, Aletta Brady.
To the little blue planet that we live on. So while it may seem is
so previous workshop reading background, but we're all good now. Alrighty. Keynote speaker, Aletta Brady officially, and they are a queer, non-binary, bisexual organizer, futurist, writer, and narrative activist living on Dakota land in South Minneapolis. Aletta's work is guided by Audre Lorde's wisdom that without community, there is no liberation. And everything they do is grounded in the truth that we are more powerful together, and that caring for community and caring for self are interwoven essentials to any change-making work. When looking for a keynote speaker, we knew that we wanted to look for organizations that put personal climate stories in the forefront of their work, as we are fully youth-led, and we definitely highlight a lot of our personal stories when we do our workshops and other things. And Aletta is the founder and creator of Our Climate Voices, an award-winning social justice collective humanizing the climate crisis through stories. In 2019, they were the youngest recipient of the J.M.K. Innovation Prize for their work on the vanguard of social innovation, and they have over 20 years of experience in grassroots organizing for labor rights, queer liberation, freedom movement, and climate action. And now I'm going to pass it over to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. So happy to be here with you guys in this space. I'm going to be sharing some slides, but maybe just before we get started, if everyone wants to just like stretch a little bit and like move your bodies, like get comfortable in this space. It's going to be like a long and exciting day. And I'm a big believer in sort of embodied organizing, something that I've really learned from Bronte Velez, another amazing queer organizer. Let me share. First of all, thank you guys so much for having me. I was really inspired by that introduction. I loved that the intro screen said have fun, because I think we all know that this work can be really exhausting, and it's important to be having fun and connecting with each other as we're doing it. So can someone just let me know if this is working? Can you guys see the slides? Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to just start us out with a quick grounding meditation to bring us into this space before I dive into talking about this stuff. Like Erica mentioned, it's really personal for a lot of us. And so I just invite all of you guys, if you want to turn your cameras off, that's fine. Or if you want to leave your camera on, that's fine as well. But just find a place where you are sitting comfortably and allow yourself to take a deep breath in and a long, smooth exhale out. And then closing your eyes, Just allow your breath to find its regular rate and rhythm. I want to invite you guys to imagine a spot in nature where you feel particularly at ease, comfortable, and at peace. Imagining this place with all of your senses. Look around you. Notice what it is that you see in this place. Notice what time of day it is, what time of year. Notice what the air feels like on your skin. And as you breathe in, notice any aromas that are in this place. Listen to the sounds around you. And if it's a place where you feel safe and comfortable to do so, imagine slipping off whatever you have on your feet and feeling whatever it is beneath them. Maybe even wiggling your toes a little bit. And then just in allowing yourself to rest in this place in whatever way you're drawn to. And whenever you're ready, taking your time, slowly making your way out of this visualization and gently opening your eyes. All right, thank you guys. I'll let folks sort of take their time coming back into this space. I saw some folks were saying hi. I would love if folks would just pop in their name, their pronouns, the land they're on, just so that we can sort of get a sense of who is here in this space with us. Thank you guys for the very generous introduction. I have been organizing for 10 years, but I did start organizing in the 4th grade. 20 years, but I did start organizing in the 4th grade. My first campaign was around, there was polluting in South Minneapolis, and there wasn't polluting in the suburbs. And so I took on a campaign at home to say that it wasn't fair to be polluting in city schools and not in suburban schools. So that was sort of the beginning of my organizing career. I am the founder and creative director of Our Climate Voices, and our co-director, Kiana, is on this call today too. I'll talk a little bit about Our Climate Voices, and then I really want to talk about narrative change and the importance of grounding in story as we're doing this work. So Our Climate Voices is an organization that was founded in 2015 with a mission to humanize the climate crisis through first-person storytelling. And so as like a cohort of young folks, we were looking around and seeing at the time that there was sort of this vacuum when it came to personal stories in the climate crisis. And a lot of folks were talking about this crisis as if it were happening sometime in the future, somewhere far away, which led to this sense of it not being something that was really present in our lives. And so we were inspired by the marriage movement for Black lives, and the Me Too movement and other movements for social change that have created a shift in culture in personalizing crises and talking about the ways in which justice issues are touching our lives and the importance of systemic action. So I encourage you guys to check out our work. Our team is led by an amazing group of young queer folks, BIPOC, and disabled folks. And I will also say, I guess, to introduce myself, my pronouns are they, them, and I identify as a non-binary and disabled organizer. So 3 of the issues that we see as an organization that really stand in the way of people taking action on climate, which I think is what we're all here today interested in, is number 1, and this has shifted substantially, and I think the young people are sort of leading older folks in this way, but a lot of people think that climate change is an issue that's not going to impact their lives personally. They think it's an issue that is going to touch somebody else's life in another place or in the future. There's a lot of talk about how climate change is going to impact people's children and grandchildren. And when we don't think that an issue is going to impact us personally or impact people that we love personally or communities that we care about personally, we're much less likely to take action. The second thing that happens with climate change is this is such an immense issue that neurologically our brains actually can't comprehend the scope of the crisis. And so when we try to take in the devastating news that we get about sea level rise, about glaciers melting, about massive wildfires and hurricanes and flooding and heat waves, what happens in our body is we end up going into a shutdown state. And we go into a freeze or anxiety state, which actually leads us to paralysis rather than to action. And so that's one thing that keeps a lot of folks from doing anything, because it just creates this sense of devastation. And then the third thing that we talk about is the way that corporations have convinced a lot of people that combating climate change means making particular consumer choices that people either don't want to make or are not poised to make, and feel pretty disconnected from the actual issue at hand. And so this idea of individual action on climate change has been marketed really heavily. And those are, so that's the third thing that we talk about. And you guys feel free to drop any questions in the chat. I will open the space up for questions right before the hour. But this is something we talk a lot about at Our Climate Voices, and something that I would really encourage you guys to think about today as you're going through this summit, is that climate change is not a personal failing. I'm sure you guys know this, but this is not a crisis that you created. This is not a crisis that people that you probably know created. It's a systemic issue that requires systemic solutions. And this is fossil fuel industry and other corporate interests and governments have profited off of trying to convince people that combating the climate crisis can be done by, for example, recycling or going vegan or driving a hybrid car. And what this does is it not only takes the spotlight off of the folks who are actually profiting off of this intentionally and willingly, but it also separates us from each other. It doesn't lead well to collective action when we are made to feel shame and guilt for our, potential lack of action in these ways. It silos us and disconnects us from each other and makes us point the finger at other people rather than at the folks who are actually profiting off of this crisis. And so that is something that I think in this space is really important to combat, this this instinct that we look at each other and say, why aren't you doing this? You should be doing this more. And instead, we should be coming together and holding corporations and governments accountable for putting our lives and our futures at risk. And so some of the things that we have found that combat this environmental melancholia, this feeling that the crisis is so overwhelming and we're just one person, and how can we even do anything in this immense crisis, is to come together. And so some of the ways that we can do that, we do that through narrative change work. And so what narrative change work is, the idea that we each connect to our own stories and our own experiences and the ways that climate change has touched our lives. I know you guys talked about experiences with wildfires. Sometimes it might be experiences with a loved one who has asthma, or a lake you used to go to that's now polluted and covered in algae, or the change in the seasons changing your mood. All of these various ways that this touches our life is connecting with ourselves first, and then connecting with other people and understanding the ways that this is touching their lives. And so when we engage in narrative change work, when we share our own experiences, that decreases the psychological distance between ourselves and this crisis. It makes it seem way less amorphous and scary, and something that we can understand. The other thing that it does is it just creates connection between people. So rather than focusing on sort of individual consumer choices or behavior change in that way, we're coming together and we're caring for each other in this crisis and in this tragedy, and in this very overwhelming thing that sort of young folks, like somebody mentioned, it's unfair for us to have to take this on, but we do, right? So the best thing we can do is come together and lift each other up and hold each other in the ways that this crisis is really overwhelming. And so from there, when we start to connect to the emotions and the ways that we're all in this together, we're able to feel more hope and connection and taking concrete action to demand systemic change, both locally and nationally and internationally. And so can somebody pop up the polls? I just wanted to sort of get a sense of the room before we go into this day of how folks are feeling with regards to climate change. Amelia, are you able to do that? So if you guys want to just say, how has climate change impacted you personally? It looks like almost everyone feels that way. And most people feel that way, which is really interesting because I think the generations above us don't feel that way necessarily. And I think this is one of the reasons why young folks are really having to speak to our elders and being like, this is not an issue of the future, right? Like this is an issue that's happening right now. Amelia, would you just pop the third question? And so this is another thing that we talk a lot about, is the ways that climate change disproportionately, the way that climate change exacerbates almost every social justice issue and disproportionately impacts BIPOC folks, Indigenous folks, disabled folks, women, and thinking about the importance of not just talking about that, but also leaning on the solution and wisdom that folks in those communities have been creating for centuries. I think a lot about queer folks and the ways that our communities have had to build resiliency in moments of crisis, right? Like when folks are kicked out of their homes, what it looks like in queer community to immediately be bringing people in and being like, here's a home, here's food, we've got you, we're in community with each other. There's a lot of wisdom there that I think the climate movement can learn from. And so thank you. You can stop sharing the polls now. And I want to be cognizant of time, but the last thing I'll just say before I open up the space to questions is I want to read you guys this quote. And this is something that I think is really deeply embedded in my philosophy of narrative change, which is, the most important step is this: train yourself towards solidarity and not charity. You are no one's savior. You are a mutual partner in the pursuit of freedom. And so one of the things that I would encourage you all to think about as you're going into these workshops this afternoon and getting connected with local organizations is thinking about storytelling as narrative activism, right? Like when we connect with our own stories, where we're from, the land that we're on, the identities that we hold, the communities that we come from, and the ways that we're witnessing this crisis show up in our lives in both small and large ways, right? Like there are deeply tragic ways that this is showing up. And then there's the day-to-day insidious growing crisis where the sky, like we can't see the sky a lot of the time, or the summers are really hot. And I think that naming that each of those things come with grief and understanding sort of what we're carrying in our own lives allows us to show up with one another as a mutual partner in the pursuit of freedom. And so I would encourage you guys all to connect with yourself in that way, to talk with others in your community, understand what they're carrying, what they're feeling, what they're holding as this crisis moves upon us. And then in sharing those stories, work together to hold the people in power who are creating this crisis accountable. Because there's way more of us than there are of them. And to be honest, they're terrified of us coming together, which is why they've put so much energy and effort into trying to make us point the finger at each other rather than at the folks in power. So I will stop there. I see there's 3 minutes left. But here are some ways that you all can connect with us. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them. I can't see the chat. Let me stop sharing. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I actually have a quick question. from like your experience and like through working with OCV, what has been like one of the most enlightening parts of your job, and yeah, things that make you hopeful, kind of that kind of sense.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I will say that I think storytelling gets thrown around a lot. Like a lot of people talk about storytelling, but oftentimes, at least in my experience, what I see is sort of this version of extractive storytelling where it's like, where's a story that we can put forward that's going to really get people's attention? And I think one of the things that we've learned at our Climate Voices is that like really ethical storytelling, and we do workshops on ethical storytelling if anyone is interested in that. But ethical storytelling really means like taking time to listen to people where they're at and hear what they want to share, rather than be listening to try to like, in a capitalistic sense, extract and like promote something. And so I think that has been what's created, like gives me the most hope, is those moments where we realize that we do have time to connect with each other, right? Like this is urgent, but it doesn't mean that we need to run each other over, and we do have time to connect with each other and really get to know each other. And I think that when that happens, I find that like the movement and the actions that come out of that type of connection are much more grounded in care for each other than sort of like the capitalistic sense of wanting to get more attention and likes and follows and all of that. So the hope that I get, and I don't know, Kiana, if you have something to add to this, but like when we're really able to be in community with each other and stop and take the time to listen to one another, I feel like really meaningful action comes out of that. Do we speak to present to at schools? Yes. If you guys are interested in working with us, you can email info@ourclimatevoices.org, and I will put that in the chat. What do I think of anarchism as an economic system for collective liberation? Giovanni, that's an amazing question, and I do not feel like I can answer that in 30 seconds. I'm interested in anarchism in some ways, and I have some skepticism about it. I will say what I think that I do really believe in is localizing, like deeply localizing community in a lot of different ways, and community resiliency, and like moving towards like smaller community-based models of sustainability and community care. And if you want to chat more about anarchism, send me an email. Oh man, what story really inspired me? Okay, well, briefly, I will say this. William Copeland, amazing organizer from Detroit, shared his story with us about losing one of his dearest friends during a heat wave because his friend did not have air conditioning. And it's just a really sad story. And he took his friend's memory and legacy and vowed to shut down the Detroit trash incinerator, which was largely taking trash from the suburbs and then polluting in the largely low-income BIPOC neighborhoods in Detroit. And this was leading to making it challenging for folks with asthma during increasing heat waves because of climate change. And so William Copeland shared his story on our platform and used that to launch a petition to shut down the Detroit trash incinerator, which was a massive environmental issue. Garnered over 30,000 signatures from that, and they ended up shutting down the trash incinerator. So for me, that was a really amazing example of how narrative change can be a part of compelling people to take action when we're really seeing each other as human beings that to care for in community. You guys feel free to cut me off when I need to stop talking, but I'm seeing another question.
Yeah, I think this can be the last question. Thank you.
Okay, so how would we localize in a large area such as the Bay Area? And do you think that we need more education on capitalism to not buy things sold at company people? Okay, so I'm going to answer the second part first. Yes, I think we need way more education on capitalism and the way that it's contributing to climate change. I think that it's important to be mindful of where we're shopping, but I don't think it's the most important thing, right? Like, I think what we need to actually do is organize collectively to stop allowing companies to exploit people and labor and the environment, rather than sort of feeling like our own individual consumer choices are the end all be all. Like sometimes people don't have money to quote unquote shop ethically, and that doesn't make them a bad climate justice activist. And so I think what I would like to see is more education about how corporations are exploiting the environment, and collective action about in trying to stop corporations from doing that, rather than putting the blame on ourselves when we like don't have like you can't have ethical consumption under capitalism. So I don't know if that makes sense. This is something I like think and talk a lot about, and would be happy to chat more. But I think the education needs to be around compelling companies and governments to regulate corporations, and companies to stop producing things in ways that are unethical and unsustainable. I think localizing can mean a lot of things. And I think maybe I will like not answer that, since I'm not from the Bay Area. I feel like I might not be the right person to talk about what it looks like to localize in the Bay Area. So yeah. Thank you guys. These are really good questions, and I'm a resource. Feel free to reach out if you guys have any questions on Instagram, or I'll put my email in the chat as well.
Exactly. Thank you. And it was a sort of short presentation, but feel free to reach out to Aletta or our Climate Voices whenever you have the chance. And then I'm going to pass it back. Thank you so much again, Aletta. And
yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. You guys are amazing.
Thank you. All right, now back to Amelia for what we're going to start that.
Thank you so much. I am going to pass it to Feline and Una for reminders.
Yes, thank you, Aletta, for taking your time out of your day to talk with us. It's very inspiring to hear you and your story, and are they still here? But one takeaway I had was that I like how they focused on solutions rather than just the issue, which I feel like we get a lot within, like school presentations and everything. So I'll pass it on to Una for some more reminders.
Okay, hi guys. So I just wanted to remind you all, if you have any questions, I'm going to drop some links, and one of those will be the link to our Slack. If you're not in the Slack, please join. We will be monitoring that all day. You can also always DM us on Instagram, which I'll also put in the chat, or just email us, and we will get back to you with whatever problem you're having as soon as you can. And lastly, I wanted to remind you all, if you're coming to the in-person summit and you haven't filled out our vaccine form, please do that. It's linked there. We just want to make sure that everyone is as safe as it can possibly be for our event. So yeah, I'm going to pass that back to Amelia to finish up.
All right, thank you so much. I think this concludes our intro session, but now feel free to head off to your first workshops. There are 8 of them. You were sent the link in the schedule that's in your email. So we'll see you back in a couple hours. Bye.